This presentation introduces 3 vignettes from our ethnographic work in settings of care, notably the home and the nursing home, that discuss autonomy in the context of cognitive impairment.
This ethnographic vignette is part of the fieldwork I conducted in the Flemish retirement home, which houses my 93-year-old grandmother, who is diagnosed with dementia. This particular scene took place when my mother and I were visiting my grandmother in 2019. It is set in my grandmother's room, in a closed unit of the nursing home, and depicts a conversation I had with one of my collaborators, Evelien, who has been caring for my grandmother ever since she lived there. It's almost 6:30 p.m. and Evelien strides in my grandmother's room. We strike a conversation, and after having shared a couple of laughs, I notice that, for once, she's not in a rush. I take advantage of this relaxed mood to ask her some questions, and commence by inquiring how she understands good care in relation to my grandmother, and how she tries to practice this on a daily basis. She thinks for a while, and then answers. Well, for example, we've been noticing lately that she's been a little bit down. She looks over at my grandmother. We observe this and try to find out why this is the case. Evelien hesitates. We suspect that it's because of the jumpsuit, which she didn't used to wear. It's a piece of her autonomy that she's lost, that she can't go to the bathroom on her own anymore, and that she has to wait on us to help her. Well, in theory at least. With that last part, she hints at my grandmother's incontinence. Interestingly here, Evelien negotiates autonomy as a normative value which, when lost, causes distress. Evelien thus perceives the jumpsuit as symbolic of my grandmother's lost autonomy and, consequently, as a reason for her sudden mood shift. While this is one possible explanation, it may well be that my grandmother's moodiness cannot be explained along the dichotomy of autonomy versus dependence. From my perspective, as her granddaughter, knowing my grandmother intimately, I can tell that she's always been, and in many ways still is, a very proud woman who loves beautiful clothes, elegant shoes, etc. Her unease with jumpsuit might be as much related to her disliking of the garment's aesthetics as it is to what it symbolizes for the caregivers. I'm not claiming a more truthful diagnosis of the source of my grandmother's discomforts. This is something only she knows. Conversely, I simply wish to stress that the reason for my grandmother's distress may be various, and that Evelien's identification of the value of autonomy as the main culprit suggests that this ideal is very much present in the caregiver's imaginary of what it means to ensure my grandmother's mental well-being, and thus gets entangled with the jumpsuit and my grandmother's behavior. If autonomy is a contested value here, then how do staff members restore comfort for my grandmother? I ask Evelien this question. And do you have certain strategies to... Evelien interrupts me before I can finish my question. So the past weekend she didn't wear the jumpsuit just to see whether it worked out or not. There's sometimes when she doesn't try to touch it, she says emphatically, referring to my grandmother's diaper. But then there's other moments, like in the afternoon, when she starts fumbling with it again. In the morning, she's usually quite calm, but in the afternoon, you can tell that she's growing restless. And that's when she tends to start fumbling. With fumbling, Evelien alludes to my grandmother's new habit to play with her diaper and its contents. The green jumpsuit, which envelops her body from her ankles up to her neck, was introduced exactly to prevent her from reaching her diaper. Evelien continues. So we keep observing her, and once in a while we try to leave the jumpsuit off, because she's not supposed to be sitting there all depressed now, is she? Evelyn's account shows that caring for my grandmother involves tinkering. Concretely, this entails finding out when they can afford to leave this jumpsuit off. The staff's careful monitoring of my grandmother's biorhythm revealed a certain pattern in her mood and the correspondent likelihood that she were to fumble with her diaper. In response to this observation, they have attuned their caring practices in such a way as to respect this rhythm. During the mornings, they risk leaving the jumpsuit off, but in the afternoons, they know that they have to put it on again to stop my grandmother from playing with her own excrement.
Walking with my uncle, a family ritual and the negotiations of autonomy that it entails. I did this ethnographic exercise with my family in Madrid. My uncle has been diagnosed with microcephaly in addition to diabetes. This condition makes him objectively completely dependent on others for his well-being, starting with all his basic needs, from eating to showering. After my grandparents passed away, my uncle moved in with my parents, so I will now analyze the ritualized practice of the weekly walk during the weekends. It is Sunday morning, and we are all getting prepared to go for a morning walk. Mornings during the weekend are the only moment when my parents find the time to take my uncle out. In addition, they take advantage of this trip to do the grocery shopping. My father is the one who opted for implementing this tradition in our daily lives, because for him, going out once a week indicates good care for my uncle. The walk is actually a rite. It is made with the car and has become a ritualistic performance, which implies a choreography of tinkering with the garage, moving back and forth between the garage floors and putting wooden wedges under some doors. During the trip, my uncle always sits in the co-pilot place. My father feels here he has a better view on the road, and it is easier for my father to observe him. Following Ingo, the seat is a place where the work of memory is carried on. It revives shared childhood memories of my grandfather playing with my uncle in the car, where he could simulate to be driving and even to be managing the hair seat. We stop in front of several shots, and it is at those moments when my father takes the opportunity to comment on the ritual. During the weekends, they try to adapt themselves to my uncle's schedule, he says. Hence, not only the lived memory, the embodied present and the desired future play in the work-right assemblage. Convergence and divergence of mundane rhythms play an important role too. My uncle is not woken up by his carers before 10 a.m. This is delayed during the weekends to allow him to sleep more. My father tells me that this is why they do not leave until 1 p.m. He also says that walks are driving walks because my uncle enjoys being in the car. It is relaxing for him. While talking, my father repeatedly caresses my uncle's head, as he will do several times during the journey. They used to go to the mountains, my father continues, but now time is more limited. Furthermore, my uncle's schedule must be respected due to his diabetes. As I listen to him, I realize how providing good care for my uncle is fully conditioned by time. My parents' free time, my uncle's biorhythm, the past infusing the present, and so forth. For example, while going to the mountains could be possible, this could mean my parents will have to get up really early during the weekends, and they recognize their need to rest. Now, where does autonomy come into play in this relational ritualized practice? Clearly, the goal of the walk is to get my uncle out of the house, where he spends the rest of the week. My parents think this is a good activity for him. Indeed, my parents think it is a good activity. The whole ritual is motivated by an imaginary of comfort realized through particular practices of care. My father wants my uncle to be comfortable and designs the ideal work right, based on different estimates of what comfort might mean for him. My father's ideas of comfort are, I argue, the main nodes of this assemblage, but comfort in itself is not the trigger. Rather, it is a particular awareness of my uncle's absence of autonomy, which triggers my parents' ideas about care. The ritual that grew from this absence has become naturalized as a duty. They always go for a ride and not for a true walk, and they always go in the mornings. This duty, in a sense, has created an absence of autonomy for my parents too.
Dissolving autonomy through care of tables, substances, and desires. This ethnographic case originates from 1.5 years of observant participation in a Flemish nursing home for elderly with dementia, where I followed world-building practices of residents as they emerged through material discursive enactments of caregiving, as through a myriad of other relations with past and present, tangible and imagined, human and non-human actors. Thus, my analysis grew from a careful relation. Monica, one of my collaborators in France, who passed away in November 2017, was a remarkable, intelligent woman in her 90s. At the time of fieldwork, 2016-2017, Monica had been living in the closed unit for 2 years, where she became visible in her incessant quest for comfort, as it materialized in her constant fight with the grey rectangular table of her wheelchair. Autonomy is an accent here, even if only because I had learned from her daughter that this had been an important value for her, because I was trained to critique institutional care for its negation of autonomy, and because I knew a walker would have sufficed to overcome her impaired ability to walk. An empirical ethical analysis also learns that the immobilization of Monica was motivated by multiple relational goods. The wheelchair allowed the caregivers to guarantee her safety. It reduced the amount of time necessary to contain Monica's movements, and it was expected to allow her more positive social identity, as many were annoyed by her wanderings. The different goods sedimented in the wheelchair Monica phenomenon, however, never realized a comfortable situation for her. Monica is never at peace with the wheelchair. She pulls its edges, breaks it down, throws a loud miss to whomever comes near to engage them in this phenomenon. From a biomedical perspective, this is a symptom of the disease. The social constructivist lens would validate her behavior as a protest, leaving the table to be the mute carrier of built-in normativities, of a regime of care that values efficiency over self-realization. Critical analysis, however, as Pucci reminds, fosters the too eager addition of ready-made explanations to local descriptions of a network. A careful engagement reminds that this table cannot be merely a mediator of past and present selves, because matter matters in an ontology of becoming, and because the interpreter is not innocent, but responsible. Speaking from this interested position, I read her interactions with the table as a materialization of her desire to move forward, a performance in which autonomy is not the goal, but an actant. What matters most here is that she brings the table to life by pulling it, eating on it, negotiating about it. A relational enactment that is vulnerable to alternative compositions, as I show in the following episode in the Monica table phenomenon. Because a solution for the table is mostly ready at hand, to move. This opens up new worlds, and Monica is keen on directing where to go and where and if to rest. On the moment of this episode, I've walked with her multiple times, and I'm used to her frail body leaning heavily on my arm. Yet, this is a different phenomenon. The table is a safety belt, and one powerful actant interrupts common relational practice. After an afternoon nap, Monica is widely awake. While I am enthusiastic about her vitality, the nurse asks if she had already gotten her drink. After 10 minutes, the consequences of this drink are most obvious. Monica has a slurred speech and she's in panic. And this is the first time since I know her that she doesn't only want to leave, but that her desire also pulls her home. She wants to go home and make dinner, and if I please, miss, want to get her out of this chair, there is a misunderstanding. But I'm afraid that I do understand, and that this drink didn't calm her at all, but has dissolved her normal way of engaging with emotions, desires, and the matters that enable or disable them.